You're listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast, brought to you by DraftKings, code word PHNX. You throw down $5 on any NFL game, and if you win, guess what? If you're a new customer, you get $200 to play with. All right, let's hop into this Arizona-Washington game. 21-16. And Anthony, I was tweeting out throughout the game, as I'm sure you might have seen. I actually thought that I felt pretty comfortable that Arizona was going to win this game. And we're going to get to all your guys' comments here in just a minute. But it feels like we just can't have good things around here in Tucson.
No, man, that first quarter vibe was Arizona. This was the night. Arizona was going to win tonight. The streak was going to end, and the pressure's off, and there was going to be partying in the streets. Maybe they were going to tear down the goalposts. I'm not sure. Everything was right there, Mike. I don't know. I mean, we know what happened. We know the play. Arizona's up 2 scores early in the fourth quarter at the Washington 28 with first down. Will Plummer decides to throw the ball into an area where there's like 4 or 5 human beings, and some really large Washington lineman gets the ball in his hands for the first time in his life and picks it off.
Mm-hmm.
That is Arizona football right now. That game, they go in, even if they maybe you know that drive was probably going to end in a field goal because most of Arizona's red zone drives end in a field goal.
Right.
But even so, it felt like they would have kept momentum. Time's running off. Dylan Morris is a horrible quarterback.
And Anthony doesn't say that very often.
It was right there. So we can get into the more details, but man, that one play is going to get dissected quite a bit.
You know, let's hop into the comments right here because we try to engage our listeners and our followers as much as possible. And let's start with Jesus Vaz. He says, "Okay, so Plummer made a big mistake, but I have a question." He says, Jedfish's play calling, it's horrible, west to east, never down the field. Did you see Washington come back? They always went downfield. You know, Anthony, at some point, I got to kind of agree with our guy Jesus here that this has been a mantra all season, whether it was Gunnar Cruz, now whether it's Will Plummer. When you have quarterbacks that aren't throwing for over 100 yards in a game.
I mean, I'm looking at the stats on my other screen here. He attempted 20 passes and threw for 68 yards.
That's just not going to cut it under any circumstances.
I mean, I would normally say, yeah, they needed to do that to kind of open up and spring the running game. Arizona ran for more than 200 yards. But, again, they put together these double-digit play drives, right? 10 plays, 12 plays. They had their last scoring drive tonight went 15 plays and like 58 yards. That's really hard to do. And they always bog down. I mean, that's what happens when you run that many plays and you just can't sustain it, get into the end zone. You need the big plays. And this offense, so I kind of agree with that. There's nothing downfield. There's no big plays. And you don't make the defense have to play honestly.
Anthony, you've watched you've covered a lot of college football over the years. And honestly, you've covered a lot of really good teams that, and as Dick Tomey was famous for saying, preserve the right to punt.
Yes, I used that today on Twitter.
Correct. I saw it. That's why I threw it out there. My question is this. Have you seen anything like this, though, where we don't have the Desert Swarm defense behind us? I don't think anybody's saying that. And yet you still have a team that is not looking to ever throw the ball. I don't know how you win under those circumstances. At some point, and again, I was at the game, I'm yelling at Will Plummer internally, just throw the ball downfield. Just see what will happen because this timid this doesn't work.
No, I mean, we can go back to the Desert Swarm offenses, that era of offenses, and they were low scoring and conservative by design because everything was geared to play into Arizona's defense because they could win with defense and special teams, and they just needed to not make a big mistake, eat up some clock that would give the defense field position and rest. This offense is putting up worse numbers because it's inept, not because they're trying to play into its defense.
And I think that's pretty much the key there. I understand it. If you have an all-time great defense, you just brought up the Desert Swarm, which you were fortunate enough to cover all those years. You can make the case that that's the best defense that college football has ever seen. You can. I mean, I think the stats. I think certainly would.
It's just let's just say it's an historical defense.
It's an historical defense, yes. But this defense under Don Brown is improved. I don't think there's any doubt about it. They've kept Arizona in a lot of games. But at what point, though, do you have to sit there and if you're Jed Fish, and he's the offensive coordinator, he's the one calling the plays, do you have to sit there and say, we're just not good enough on this side of the ball? And not only are we not good enough, we're not even close to being good enough. Because what you saw out there today was a game, Anthony, and you're the expert here. You're the one that's seen way more than I have. But if Arizona even delivers a C performance on offense, they win this game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you can't. This defense, I agree, it's improved. The pressure up front is a lot better. The play up front is a lot better. This was a game I thought they could win because Dylan Morris is horrible under pressure. Mm-hmm. And I knew Don Brown was going to dial up some stuff, and he did. And they got some sacks and they got some pressures. But like on the biggest throw of the game, when he hit that 51-yarder to Bynum in that scoring drive, Morris had all day. It's kind of situational stuff. You got to do it, and you got to do it at the right time. But you can't. While this defense is better, you can't ask them to keep the other team under 20 points because that's the only way right now you're going to win a game. Because your offense can't score 20 points in a game.
All right, I want to go to Bob, our friend Bob, who has called in many, many times over the years to talk with us. Boog on YouTube. If Anthony didn't know that, he said this team still can't score. It poops the bed in the red zone. Anyone who thought we were winning this game with field goals was lying to themselves. Let me ask you this. What is the problem when this team, and I understand that it's more difficult once you get into the red zone. I get that. But this team does seem, Anthony, like when they get into the red zone, it's almost like, okay, we're here. We can always just attempt a field goal.
Right. Well, maybe Joyner is going to be that guy that helps turn the page on that. Because whatever they've been doing for the first 6.5 games wasn't good enough. And Barry Hill's pretty darn good.
He is. He's very good. Barry Hill's the guy that would start for a lot of teams in the conference. He
would play on a lot of Arizona teams over the years. Maybe he wouldn't be the number one option or a superstar, but he would fit right in. Who else is making plays?
And that's the problem.
Right. So, it's kind of rhetorical, right? The answer is nobody, but maybe we see a lot more Joyner in the red zone because
let's just talk about
go ahead.
Let's just talk about Jamari, right? Because I was getting messages and I was getting tweets all day about Jamari. At what point, and again, guys, we're going to get to all of the responsibility questions because I think those are more than fair questions. At what point, if you're Jed Fish, and you've seen it, Anthony, where you throw Chuck Levy at quarterback, a guy who doesn't have the throwing capabilities that at least Jamari has shown in the past, whether it's in high school. At what point do you say, you know what, we've just got to give Jamari Joyner an extended look here, not a special package, not anything like that, because we've seen with Gunnar Cruz, we've seen with Will Plummer that, let's be honest, quite frankly, they're just not good enough. And again, they're great kids. That's not what I'm saying, but they're just not good enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a snap your fingers, let's put Jamar Joyner at quarterback kind of thing. But now they've had a couple weeks to kind of ramp him up a little bit to a little bit of action, some situational stuff. If you're still trying to win this year, you've got 5 more weeks, right? You can coach him up a little bit harder where he can play more extended minutes. I don't know if you get Jamar Joyner ready to play a 60-minute game.
Right.
But again, I don't know if you don't.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
Because we're at the point where what do you have to lose?
Right.
What do you just going to add a couple games to the losing streak?
Who cares?
So, yeah, I'd like to see him play more because I think when you're outgunned personnel wise, and this is kind of RichRod's old thing, right?
Mhm.
The reason he ran that offense he did was because he was outmanned.
Right.
So that was a way for lesser talented teams to compete and even the playing field by doing tempo, RPO, all that kind of stuff. And right now, Jamar Joyner is Arizona's only chance to do something similar.
All right. So I will say this. If you're not on DraftKings right now, you should be on DraftKings. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. You should be taking the under in every single Arizona game. I've been taking the under in every Arizona game. You should all be taking the under. You know what? You throw in code word PHNX, and guess what? If you bet on an NFL game with $5, pays out $200, and you can play with that, and you can turn that into something special. And 21 and up, Arizona only, gambling problem, call 1-800-NEXT-STEPS. Again, new customers only, and eligibility restrictions may apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Anthony, again, I know you might not be a gambler, but I took the under with DraftKings in the Colorado-Arizona game. I never understood why it was 46.5. Right now, Arizona plays pretty good defense. To me, it seems pretty easy. And so you throw that one in there. The other thing, too, about when you're here at PHNX, the AZ Wildcats podcast, is you get the best person in the city right here for the post-game shows. And that's not Mike Luke. That's Anthony Gimino, because he's been around. He's seen good Arizona football. He's covered top 10 teams. He knows what it's about. All right. Let's talk now about where Arizona goes from here. And let's get to some of the questions here, because we got a lot of really good questions. And let's go with Bob, and then we're going to get to Sarah right after that. Bob says Arizona's defense has been on the field way too much this season. And I mean, from his mouth to our ears, this is a team, Anthony, that has defensively, if you were to tell me before the season this is what we would get by this point in the year, I think all of us would have taken it. The defense, I think has performed admirably. It's not the Desert Swarm, but it's been a solid defense. I would put it like that. And like Bob said, they're on the field way too much.
Yeah, I mean, what would you grade it? A C?
C, B minus?
Maybe. I mean, I think to get into the B range, you got to get me some turnovers.
And that's the point. That's the problem.
Yeah, you got to make me some plays, and that's the killer. I mean,
Let me ask you this, Anthony. But let me just kind of rephrase it a little bit. Do you ever go into the game and said Arizona's defense lost them that game, outside of maybe San Diego State?
This season? No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you wish at times they would have done a little bit more in the big play turnover department.
Right.
Basically, hey, let's go back to an offense that, again, has now gone 10 consecutive games without scoring 20 points.
Right.
This is the year like 2021. I mean, scoring is pretty popular in college football these days.
It's designed to score.
I mean, I've seen some of the trends. Pretty much college football sets a offensive records every single year. That's hard to do.
Right. And it's designed for you to be able to score. And let's get to Sarah's point, and because I got a theory on this. Sarah Beth Greer, she puts out there, we have to play all 4 quarters, not just 3. And I've always thought, and it's a great point, and we appreciate the contribution. I've always felt, though, with bad teams or teams that just aren't very good, whatever way you want to word it, it's easy to play a half, stay with it. It's easy to maybe play 3 quarters, but generally at some point the talent disparity wears out, and Washington's not good. Washington sucks. I mean, you called it before the season. We'll get to Washington here in a little bit, but Washington still has better players than Arizona does.
They do, and now we can see that Arizona played BYU into the fourth quarter. They played UCLA into the fourth quarter. They played Oregon into the fourth quarter. They played Washington into the fourth quarter. And this was the first time they actually had the lead, 2-score lead. But yeah, I don't know, is talent perhaps just general overall conditioning.
Mhm.
That has a little bit also to do with talent, because now we saw last week was 28-0. They
Right.
got blitzed in the second half. Today, 21-3. They just,
They get
I
worn
don't
down.
know if it's I don't want to say it's a kind of a willpower mental thing. I just think they wear down
Right.
right at that end of the third quarter mark.
And I can't really sit here and blame the defense. And like you said, I think it's a good point that they haven't forced turnovers. I agree, but I think it's been overall a decent unit. And that's, I think, what's kind of disappointing, because at least coming into the year, the question had was the question that I think a lot of people have had for the last 7-8 years is, first of all, what's Arizona's defense going to look like? Because yes, there's a lot of questions about the offense, but I think more than anything, people question what exactly is the defense going to look like. And I think the defense, by and large, has been it's been good enough. How about that?
Yeah, and now
And
the questions are, okay, what are we doing on offense?
let's get to
What's
Bob's
the plan?
question. Let's
Yeah.
get to our guy Bob's question here, and then Sony Cam one. We're going to get to yours then. Bob says Arizona does not and has not had a QB who can lead a game-winning drive in quite some time, and he's true, and he's right. And my question, I got a twofold question here for you. Jordan McLeod, I think, was not great, but he was significantly better than what we've seen from Will Plummer and Gunnar Cruz. But he's also not going to mistake anybody for, being Michael Vick at Virginia Tech. You've got him coming back next year. Then you got Noah Fafita coming in, but it's not like Noah Fafita is good, as many numbers as he's putting up. He's going to be a freshman, and it's not like he's Trevor Lawrence. So what is the hope for next year if you're a coach, or if you're Anthony Gimino and you've seen a lot of teams? What is the hope for next year from the quarterback position?
Yeah, well, sign me up for that quarterback room right now if it holds.
Right.
McLeod and Fafita, I'd take my chances with that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not sure you get a top. How do you get a top notch if those are the two coming in? How do you get a top notch transfer?
Right. Right. You're gonna have to ride with them.
There's 100 quarterbacks in the transfer portal, but if you see a guy like McLeod, who Arizona liked, had been the starter for at least a half a second before he got hurt, and then a 4-star freshman,
right?
Yeah, it's going to be hard to recruit talent. So.
Don't come to Arizona. We got too many quarterbacks.
Because it's hard to gather quarterback depth these days.
Right.
You don't get 4 or 5 really good guys in the quarterback room anymore, because your 3, 4, and 5 guys are transferring.
Mm-hmm. So all right. So I got a couple questions here, and we're going to keep the comments coming, everybody, because we're going to keep. And I actually had 2 different people message me this, so I'm going to throw it out right now. We got this from Nick Howard, and we got it from ASAP Duck 123. Great name. Not sure what it means, but I still like that name. Did we maybe not appreciate what we had with RichRod at the time, AG?
Well, I think we appreciated his offense, right? And that's the comment, right? His scheme was so good, he could win 7 games with not much talent.
Right.
Bingo. That's kind of what we were talking about. And that's what the whole design was, that he could take his lesser guys and beat your better guys.
Right.
Schematically, because what he was doing was
he was so good.
He was eliminating basically one of the other defenders by the scheme.
Right.
And I remember, and we talked about this way back on a different radio show, but I remember like RichRod's first year, and I was interviewing other coaches he had coached against or something like that. And the comment was that nobody was better in the country than RichRod in terms of getting guys in space. And that wasn't talent, that was scheme.
Right.
And, a lot of people copied it. Everybody runs some version of it. But, that doesn't mean everybody did it at the same level. Or, RichRod he kind of originated originated it, understood it, and by and large did it better than most people for a lot of years.
Right. Like I said, a couple things here. First of all, if you're not on DraftKings, you should be on DraftKings. Anthony, have you taken advantage of some of these free plays that DraftKings has?
Well, I might have. I'll extend this for you a little bit here because, if you weren't one of the smart people who bet the under, or you weren't one of the smart people who got like Arizona at 17 or 18 points, you could play when Arizona went up 10-0. You could do an in-game bet and get Arizona still getting about 7.5 points
throughout almost the entire game. And you know what? If you don't take that,
so that was a pretty good deal.
Right, for sure. And you know what else is a great deal too? You throw down $5, and you know what? You win an NFL game, they'll give you $200 to play with. So you throw in code word PHNX right there, and it works. Now, one other thing too that I don't think that I've talked with Anthony about, and we're going to get to some questions here because we got Sean Seeley and we got Nick Howard making some very good points here. What do you know about Manscaped, Anthony?
I know what I know is from listening to you and Saul read these ads.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to throw out to you about Manscaped. We're in the year 2021. Everybody grooms down below a little bit. And you know what? If you're saying you don't, you're probably lying to yourself. So why not go with the company that makes it easy? Why not go with the company that knows what they're doing? And you know what? They make it easy. They got all the tools. They got all the technology, everything you need. And guess what? If you're listening right now, you throw in code word PHNX and you get 20% off and free shipping with the code word PHNX at manscaped.com. Again, code word PHNX and 20% off, free shipping, PHNX code word. And it's something that you're going to want to hop on there literally and figuratively because it makes your life easier. And that's really what you want right there. Anthony Gimino might not have used it yet. I have used it. And you know what? You can tell by the grooming on Mike Luke right here that it's probably something that you might want to hop in as well, because you know what? It keeps you clean. It keeps you nice. Okay. Manscaped. So, all right. I want to get to some of these comments here. And here, let me ask you this before we get to some of it, because I think White Panda 10 makes an interesting point. Another great name. Why hasn't Arizona football been able to be good in the last 20 years? I've texted you that the last day or two. You haven't responded. So I figured that I would wait until we got onto the AZ Wildcats postgame podcast to see what the great one Anthony says. What do you throw? Just generally, what do you look at and say, you know what? That's kind of the overarching theme as to why Arizona football hasn't been able to be good. Or is there an overarching theme?
You know my answer, Mike.
Go ahead.
It's always the head coach.
Mm-hmm.
College football is all about the head coach.
Right.
So, obviously, if you want to go back at the origin story is running Dick Tomey out of town and hiring John McAfee.
Mm-hmm.
So that set the program back. So you bring in Mike Stoops, but he's got to get a few years to get going. You know, he kind of gets them to a decent place, recruits some good dudes, some guy named Gronk and Foles, and goes to the Vegas Bowl. And you think maybe he's turning the corner, and then he runs into a wall and is gone. You know, that was kind of a Greg Byrne thing. Stoops wasn't Byrne's guy, so he wants to bring in RichRod. RichRod has one fantastic season. But, you know, he also seemed to, near the end, have one foot out the door and didn't understand how to recruit to Arizona.
I'm glad you threw that one out there right there. Here's my question. You covered the duration of the Dick Tomey era. You saw three, during your time. I don't think you were covering them in 88 when they had a top 25 team, but I think from 90 to 98, if I'm not mistaken, you saw 3 top 25 teams. Is that fair?
Yeah, 91 for me.
Okay. All right. So you saw a top 5 team. You saw a top 10 team. My question is this. Why was Dick Tomey able to do something where Arizona would be kind of middling, but then you would every maybe third, fourth year, you would have a really good team. And even the year after the Desert Swarm, it was a good team that had a lot of tough breaks. But a guy like a RichRod, who I think from an X's and O's perspective was about as good as anybody, wasn't able to maintain that. What was Tomey able to do that his 4 successors were not able to do?
Because he had a great coaching staff and guys who knew how to recruit to here, despite the obvious lack of facilities. I mean, that's the other piece to the puzzle. When Tomey went to Jim Livengood in the early to mid 90s and said, we need to spend money to upgrade our facilities, it wasn't a priority. Arizona was doing great, doing pretty good, at least with what they had.
Right.
And Arizona didn't spend money, which then put them further behind everybody else in the league. And then years later, forced them to spend more money just to catch up. So that was a lose-lose situation. But, Tomey always understood they had great coaching and great recruiting eyes.
Right.
They recruited the right kind of talent to Arizona in the right kind of places. And, when you look back at Stoops, and he had a great coaching staff. He recruited pretty well for a while, but, he kind of ran out of steam at the end. And then I think RichRod just never really got the recruiting piece. He put together, one great year, win the South. With when you fell into Scooby Wright.
Right.
But you can't build a 4 or 5 year program on one Scooby Wright.
Right. I got a couple questions here, Anthony. So let's go with Sony Cam 1, because this was a great question. It's almost like he saw my notes, because I was going to ask you about this, and then we're going to get to ASAP Duck 1, 2, 3. Tomey was great at recruiting JC talent.
Yeah.
Now, the term JC talent now in the year 2021 is almost kind of like a bad word, and I'm not sure exactly why. But Sony Cam 1 is exactly right. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. The 98 team that went 12-1 and finished fifth in the nation in one poll, fourth in the nation in the other. Your best player on your team, Chris McAllister, JC Kid. You're arguably at the time your best wide receiver, Jeremy McDaniel, JC Kid. Another guy, Edwin Mulatalo, went on to play 10+ years as a starter in the NFL, JC Kid. You've had guys that were redshirting at the time, and Antonio Pierce, JC Kid. And I'm sure off the top, and these are just guys off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot that you probably remember. But is it different in the year 2021 as far as recruiting JC kids?
Yeah, it's way different. It's way different.
How so?
Well, the transfer portal's your new JC.
Right.
As Nick mentioned.
Well, as Nick Howard just threw out there.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to recruit the JC kid anymore, because you can go into the transfer portal, find a guy who has maybe 3 or 4 years of eligibility, who you also have at least a little bit or maybe a lot of tape on at the D1 level. So it's kind of a safer recruitment and perhaps a longer recruitment. So the portal is your new JC.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Maybe that's everybody's always looking for ways to beat the system. And so maybe there'll be some smart head coach that kind of bypasses the portal and says, hey, I'm going to go get these talented JC kids that now nobody seems to want.
Now, Yavapai Duke makes a point, and I understand what he's making, but I don't know that it's necessarily quite relevant to Arizona. He said that Arizona lost all JC football, but when I look at least at the Tomey years, it wasn't really Arizona JC kids that they were making a big killing on. It was generally
some. But it was California, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. Those were the biggies.
Idaho.
Do
you know who the Idaho one was? Wasn't it Edwin?
I don't remember. I
Oh,
don't.
there you go. I feel good if I just stumped Anthony Gimino on something that
I'm
you
just
just
gonna
covered.
go Google this real quick over here. So
Yeah, you go ahead and
now,
ASAP,
okay, well, you mentioned Chris McAllister as a JC kid, which is technically true. But come on, he was like a borderline 5-star kid.
he would have been the epitome of a kid that could have gone to Alabama.
Yeah, I mean,
he was
yeah. I mean, he was all over the recruiting mags and had signed with UCLA, and then there was some SAT stuff that the UCLA didn't like, so he ended up at JC for a year.
Right.
So not your traditional JC guy, but yeah.
If he had at least come maybe from some good football lineage, then maybe he would have been a little bit better.
Maybe
at that
there was
point.
a connection between his dad and Coach Tony. Maybe.
I'm just saying. All right, I think Ace. Now, here's another question that I wanted to throw out there because, and again, we have the smartest listeners in the world right here on the AZ Wildcats podcast because it's almost like they're reading my notes sometimes, or heck, maybe I'm just looking at Twitter and seeing what they're saying and stealing their thoughts.
Stealing.
Who knows? ASAP Duck makes a great point. Arizona football might not win a game till 2023. And here's the reasoning. I don't necessarily know that I agree with that, but let's just say that Arizona doesn't win the rest of this season, which I think is a very legitimate possibility from what we've seen so far.
Okay. I agree.
Okay. Yeah. You look at the out of conference next year, and we've talked about it before. And again, knock on wood, don't beat me up here. NAU, as we've seen, is not a gimme. You don't get NAU next year. You get San Diego State, which is most likely a loss. You get Mississippi State. I haven't watched any Mississippi State football all year, but I'm guessing that's probably a loss. And then you get North Dakota State, which is supposed to be your NAU, which could very easily be a loss. Anthony, this streak could be going on for quite a while.
We got to do a winning post-game show at some point.
I mean, yeah.
I really thought tonight was a golden opportunity.
I did too.
Because I think everything lined up. You know, if you want to look historically, which I think these things are kind of stupid, but like the home team on a Friday night, totally known for being the upset winner.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly, I just thought the way Arizona can win this year or anytime soon is if they play another team that has a horrible quarterback.
Mm-hmm. And this was their opportunity.
This was their opportunity. And even last week, I thought it was too. But you know, Arizona gives up a special teams touchdown, gives up a touchdown to the offense, to the other defense, and then it just gets out of hand. But yeah, this was because you're not going to outscore anybody. I mean, right. You're not going to win 35-31. So you better hope you play a lousy quarterback that has a bad day. And Morris hit a few throws, but
Can I ask you a question? Why are they? And I don't. This isn't the Washington post-game show, but I got a couple questions on Washington because you follow college football around the nation very closely. Two-part question. Washington, to me, is always should be a top 20 program, just from a historical perspective, from some of the built-in advantages. What has happened there under Jimmy Lake with the precipitous fall? And second of all, you've got a kid in Heward that was a 5-star, arguably the top-rated quarterback in the nation. Why have they been so reticent to throw him out there when you've got a guy like Dylan Morris? Two questions. Go there, AG.
Right. I don't know why Dylan Morris is the hill Jimmy Lake is going to die on.
Right.
I mean, yeah, they eke out a win tonight. So Jimmy Lake is 6-5 in his career, all with Dylan Morris as his starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Not good enough at Washington. I don't know why. Of course, I'm not there covering Washington. I'm not watching the practices. Maybe Heward's not ready. But that does seem, like I said, that seems like a strange hill to die on. You're Jimmy Lake. You're under fire. You're only in your second year. People want you gone. And you're rolling out Morris, who now has – yeah, I mean, he's not Will Plummer, who's basically getting his third or fourth game of experience.
Right.
This was his 11th start. You know, I think you've got a pretty good volume of tape on Dylan Morris and who he is, and that's not good enough. But sometimes, you know, Washington had those 3 years back to back of double-digit wins under Peterson. Then his last year, okay, they go 8-5. Maybe there's some slippage there, and he decides to hang him up or step away or whatever he decided to call it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they pretty much, you know, we can all second guess that decision to elevate Jimmy Lake from DB coach to.
What did you think about it at the time, if you don't mind me asking? What did you think about it?
I mean, he was, in a sense, he was probably one of your top 5 hottest assistants in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So from that perspective, keeping your own, good recruiter, you know, he's destined to be a head coach at some time. So why not at Washington?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we can look back at it in hindsight, and maybe it's too soon to make that final conclusion on him, but doesn't look good. And part of that is because they don't look like a real cohesive team that's still together. I mean, there seems to be a lot of bickering up there.
And it doesn't look like there's a plan. I mean, again, to me, USC should always be USC and Oregon with the built-in advantages should probably be the 2 best teams in the conference year in and year out. You know, I get that there's a little bit of ebbs and flows, but Washington to me should always be right there in that third window. And man, they've fallen a lot. They've fallen way back because again, go ahead.
But look at where they were. Was it 14 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
They went winless,
right?
And so why? What changed?
I've forgotten about that. That's why we have AG on here.
Yeah. Did Washington? Did their stadium fall down? No. Did they stop becoming an attractive place to play college football? No. The only thing that changed from like one era to the next was the head coach.
Right. Now, before we got a couple minutes here before we wrap this one up. And again, we appreciate everybody on here listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. You know, we got everything wrapped up in the state, whether that's Suns, whether that's Cardinals, whether that's, Sun Devils. They're great too. Everybody's covered there. You got live streams, you got podcasts. You should check out everything. Go PHNX and subscribe to the AZ Wildcats podcast while you're at it. But we got a bunch of questions here. Nick Howard, our guy, put out there about the crowd, as did White Panda 10. Sean Seeley also mentioned this as well. White Panda then doubled up on it again. I know they said that there was 30,000 people there, Anthony. I was at that game. I can tell you there was nowhere close to 30,000 people there. That was easily, and again, and you've scolded me before sometimes because AG's the professional. I'm kind of the younger whippersnapper a little bit. I'm going to stick with this one, even if you slap me down. This was easily the least impressive and least inspiring crowd I've ever seen at Arizona Stadium.
Let me tell you, Mike, it felt that way on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if Anthony's concurring with me, at least
from the beginning of the game through the end of the game, that I often think ESPN turns up the crowd mics a little too loud. You can't hear the announcers.
Right.
They needed to turn up the crowd mics today because they had no problem hearing the announcers.
Right. You had no problem. I wasn't listening to the announcers, but you had I would imagine you had absolutely no problem with hearing the announcers.
Well, at least one of the announcers wasn't Rod Gilmour. So,
man, we could have a whole 30-minute podcast on that.
Like Arizona Twitter topic.
Yes. I mean, Rod Gilmour.
Rod Gilmour on the call tonight.
And I'm sure he's
I'm totally in that camp. I'm fine with that.
Yes. No, I am as well. But here's the question. Where do you go from here? Because you got a guy in Fish that came in and you know what? I mean, he worked hard to sell a vision. You had the whole, it's personal. You're going to the fraternities. You're going to, you're meeting with the alumni. Anthony, when I was walking down, there was actually somebody that recognized me. I felt really important. Yeah. Now,
name tag? Hi.
No, I didn't have my name tag, but get a load of this. And this is where you know that we're in the year 2021. He recognized me for the beard. So I guess I'll take it any way I can get it. but but it was an interesting question, and I wanted to kind of end on this because I wanted to ask you about this. He said, these fans aren't showing up until Arizona starts winning again. And I asked him, I was like, because I just wanted to kind of pick his brain real quickly. I said, like this year, and he said, no. He said, this product isn't worth us showing up. And he said, I've gone to every game for the last 3 years. When you start winning, knock on my door and I'll come back. And honestly, I haven't talked with a lot of football fans, but I think we're going to see a lot more crowds like that until they start winning.
Yeah, that's kind of sad to hear.
Yeah,
but it's a perfectly
it makes sense though.
Sentiment. You can't blame anybody for feeling that way. I thought there was a window of opportunity where Jed could, just by the force of his personality and off-season work, get some people into the stands. But yeah, the NAU game, I think he lost a bunch of people. That that shut a door to a lot of the fans. And I agree, they're not coming back until, it's not just one win's going to do it. They're not coming back until you win multiple games. And
you know what? They're not coming back, in my opinion. They're not coming back until you put a product on the field that, this will sound harsh, and it's not meant to be harsh, that isn't embarrassing.
Well, okay, let's say it this way. They're not coming back until your offense scores more than 20 points in a game.
I would agree with that.
That's fair? I mean, if you can't score 20 points in a game, why am I coming to it?
Correct. Yes. And I think we'll close on Nick's point. He said, I'd say rock bottom, Mike, but I think we're started digging the basement there. And our close friend, John Schuster, has said that, and he's talked about this before, and I think it's spot on. He said, NAU was rock bottom. Arizona's just residing there now. It doesn't get worse than NAU. You're just there at this point.
Yeah, Arizona can't hit rock bottom because it's already there.
Yeah, like you can't dig down beyond the caliche or whatever the term is that's in the ground.
Now you're building your two-story mansion.
Right. Yeah, and Bob says, he said Arizona had attendance issues in 2015. I get it. But today, and I think Steve Rivera put it out there. I know he put a picture out there on Facebook that I think spoke pretty well for what you could see. There just weren't many people there. There wasn't close. I know what Arizona announced, Anthony. There was.
They always announce tickets sold, or actually like turnstile, right? That could be, they may be counting even hundreds of support personnel at the game.
Right.
But every college, other than the service academies, I think this is like a real story a few years ago where like 127 out of 130 programs in the country announce like tickets sold as their official attendance, not people, not butts in the seat, except for like Army and Navy and maybe Air Force.
Right.
So it's kind of weird the way. So everybody's inflated, but when you're Alabama and you got 90,000 people in the stands, those are real legit. Every seat is filled and then some.
Right.
But for the rest of the world, and certainly for the Arizonas of the world, they will count like everybody who's walking down 6th Street that maybe can see the lights.
Anthony, we appreciate you coming on. You've, believe it or not, you've been around a long time and you've got a big following. You've got I'm not there yet, but I'll get there at some point. You can have some of my red trimmings if you would like, but
no thanks.
We always, on a serious note though, always appreciate you coming on because honestly, you're the best guy in the city. You've been in the trenches, you've been there. And if people knew out there some of the thoughts that I've thrown off of Anthony, where he just looks at me and either hangs up the phone or he says, Mike, I'm not going to engage in that, you would realize what a professional Anthony is. And I think people realize that. And we're definitely fortunate to have you on these post-game shows, AG. We really appreciate you, buddy.
Anytime, Mike. Isn't this better than radio?
It really is, because we hop on there. We're on for 45 minutes. And you know what?
Yeah.
We're succinct. And you know what? We take calls, i.e., we take the comments that are made. And for everybody out there, all of the regulars, guys, we appreciate all your comments. And we'll be back with you next week, getting you ready or wrapping up everything. But yes,
are we going to be back for the pregame show, Mike?
Don't. Bob's. I was going to say Bob's listening right now, and I don't want Bob to go right there. But for all of you guys out there, we really appreciate you, and we'll be back with you next Saturday. For Anthony Gimino, I'm Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.